Bible Worm, reading the Bible with Bible Worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia.
And I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and Theologian in Residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
This week we are reading Revelation chapter 7, a vision that unfolds in the midst of the unsealing of seals and undoing of worlds as we have known them. It's a vision that seems anchored in the past and the future simultaneously, a vision that evoked for us Ezekiel and Isaiah and Genesis and Kohelet and Exodus, and also a future time when whatever suffering the faithful have endured, they can stand together in their multitudes and praise the one true source. It's an image that, at the very least, can make the work of our time less lonely. Thanks for being with us. Hey, Bobby. How are you?
Hey, Amy. I am pretty good. I can feel the summer slipping away from me a little bit, which always makes me a little sad.
I know, it goes so fast. It goes so fast.
Yeah. But it's good. It's good in the meantime.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. Yeah, I can't say I have any very interesting stories, although Revelation continues to be a very interesting story to me.
Well, I'm glad you're still interested in it because it's
They're just surprises at every turn. So every time I prepare to meet and talk about these chapters with you, I'm like, oh yeah, no, we got to talk about this.
The whole thing.
I don't know what's happening in here.
My worshiping community that I meet with on Sundays, who are mostly either homeless or have been homeless at some point in their life, we decided to do some version of the Revelation series this summer, and so we just started last night, and it's just interesting. Like I'm used to talking about Revelation with middle class folks, which has one kind of way to read it, and then reading it with people living on the street who come out of these really conservative traditions, and they're like rapture and all these things. Like there's a lot going on in the room, and they are often mystics in ways that I'm not mystics. And so anyway, I'll report back about
Please
how
do.
that goes.
That's really cool. Yeah, I feel like this text really invites a lot of things that are just not part of my day-to-day conversation.
Yeah.
So today we are reading Revelation chapter 7, the whole thing, verses 1 to 17. The very beginning of it starts after this.
Yeah.
I saw 4 angels. I know we have read some from chapter 5. We didn't read from chapter 6. Is there any kind of context setting, more immediate context setting you want to offer?
Some stuff happens in chapter 6, Amy.
Oh.
Some stuff happens for real. Yeah, you remember chapter 5, because of the way that we set up the series, I'll own it. Because of the way I set up the series, we've been moving backwards in the book for a while. Mm-hmm. And so we read Revelation 5 2 weeks ago. That was the one in which there was the one seated on the throne had the scroll sealed with 7 seals written on the front and back. Mm-hmm. And the Lamb is the one who is found who's worthy to open the scroll.
Who can open it. Yeah.
So chapter 6 is the Lamb breaking the seals on that scroll.
Ooh.
And then the scroll, the things that are in the scroll start to affect the world.
Manifest, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So some things happen in Revelation 6. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it in detail, but the first 4 seals call forth the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which come out bringing famine and war and bloodshed and death. And they start to, the world starts to feel the effects of the opening of the scroll. The 5th seal, in an interesting way to me, when the 5th seal is opened, there are some martyrs who have been living under the altar in the heavenly temple, and they come out and they say to God, when are you going to enact justice for what happened to us when we were killed? And so there's this really interesting moment where God's wrath in the book of Revelation is really seen from their perspective anyway, as like justice being done to the to the empire, the perpetrator of injustice. So that text, I think, is really rich with possibilities. And then in the sixth seal, there's a big earthquake and the moon changes to blood and the stars start to fall from the sky and the sky rolls up like a scroll, like in Isaiah. And the kings of the earth start to hide in caves and like the world is coming undone.
Yeah.
And then the seventh seal is going to get unsealed at the very beginning of chapter 8. And so chapter 7, which we're reading today, the vision takes place between seals number 6 and seal number 7 of the scroll being unrolled. So we're in the middle of some things.
Yeah, like the undoing of the created world or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, no biggie. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
People struggle with how to think about that. I mean, you and I talk about this in different contexts all the time, but how do you think about the sort of violence that accompanies God's re-entry into the world or the reclaiming of history or something like that? And at some level, it does seem to be God sort of doing things to the earth. But at another level, I think it's just a claim that like the Roman Empire and the dragon from the sky, Satan, have a grip on the earth, and separating the earth from their grip involves the undoing of things. It is necessarily an upheaval. You would love it if just suddenly like you'd wake up one morning and everything was puppies and rainbows.
Right.
But that's not the way it's going to go, it seems, according to this text anyway. And so, maybe part of this is attributable to God, part of it's attributable to the empire, and part of it is just the world has been constructed in an imperial way, and so it has to come undone in order to be remade in a different mold.
Well, that is quite a context setting for where we're going to begin in chapter 7. I'm ready to start reading. Are you ready to start?
Let's read.
Okay, I am reading from the NRSV. After this, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that no wind could blow on earth or sea or against any tree. I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living God, and he called with a loud voice to the 4 angels who had been given power to damage earth and sea, saying, "Do not damage the earth or the sea or the trees until we have marked the servants of our God with a seal on their foreheads." It's so hard to know where to stop in this chapter, but I've got to just stop here because I already have so many questions. It was so helpful just to hear sort of the context that you lay out for us from chapter 6, because just beginning in chapter 7, I was so struck by the sense of like the profound stillness of the beginning of this scene. Like they are holding back the wind.
Yes.
And I just wonder if that evokes anything in particular for you from other biblical texts and stories that you know.
The thing that occurs to me is the book of Zechariah also has apocalyptic visions. And in that text, there are also horsemen who are sort of harbingers of the day of the Lord. And they are also described as winds in some way. And so one way of kind of reading this, it's not the only way that you can read it, but one way to read it is that these 4 angels of the 4 winds are related to the 4 horsemen, and they have the like winds of destruction ready to go. And so it really is a sort of pause. This chapter 6 has been very big and very kind of violent. Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of violent. It's been traumatic. And then we have this poised for something yet still more, but then there's a pause. What does it evoke for you, Amy?
That's so helpful, Bobby, because even just thinking about it as like the winds of destruction, like it doesn't, at least in this part, it doesn't specify what kind of wind it is. And so certainly, yes, it can and maybe should be read as winds of destruction, but it also had me thinking back to like Genesis chapter 1, before there was before there were trees, before there was any, when God first begins to create, there is this Ruach Elohim, this great wind or spirit of God or something like that over the surface of the earth. So I feel like it's getting back almost to like before that in some way. I don't know. And it had me thinking about Kohelet, that talks about the winds as sort of this, as Kohelet is wont to do, talking about sort of the cycles of the world as not progressing anywhere. And so it is frustrating to Kohelet, I think, and at least in the beginning, that nothing ever moves forward. The winds just go and go and go. And this is like a real change from that. Like this is this is the moment that we're going to progress, Kohelet.
I love those connections, Amy. I hadn't made that Kohelet connection for sure about the winds are on their roots and they get back to where they started and they just go again. And here they pause. I love that. You're talking about the beginning, and here we are sort of at the end. And there really is a sense in the biblical text in which the vision of the end of history is a return to the beginning, but maybe in a more fulfilled kind of way. There's like a little it's a circle with maybe it's a spiral through time.
Yeah.
And so I love evoking that imagery of the creation. One of the reasons that I said a destruction is because of Zechariah. The other one is because of the command they're given by the fifth angel in verse 3, don't damage the earth.
Yes.
And so it feels like they're holding back the damaging wind.
Yes.
But I like thinking about the winds of creation and the winds of destruction kind of at the same time. And that sort of, it's all caught up together. The remaking and the undoing, like it's all part of a whole.
Yes. No, it is the wind of something completely different is about to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can surely see how they're connected. Do you imagine this angel that is ascending from the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living God?
Yeah.
Do you imagine there is, like, are we just talking about it's rising from the east, like where the sun ascends, or that it has a particular connection to the sun? And what is the seal?
Those are such good questions, Amy. And one of the commentaries that I'm reading is by Brian Blunt in the New Testament Library series. And he makes a cross-reference to Isaiah 41:25, where second Isaiah, Deutero-Isaiah, envisions the one coming from the east who calls my name, and he comes to trample the governors like mud as a potter treads the clay, which seems to be an image of God, I think, coming from the east to trample down the powers that rule the earth. We might be able to dig down deeper into that, like exactly what is that reference in Isaiah. But the imagery seems to be related, that here is one coming from the east rising to like undo the empires that are ruling the earth. Here it's not God, but an emissary of God, the angel.
I really like the connection, by drawing the connection between this figure and God and then saying, but here it is an emissary of God. It is not God. Right. God's self. I have in my mind this, when we get to verse 3 and we're talking about like, don't cause any harm, don't cause any damage until we have marked the servants of God, for me evokes Exodus 12, like the marking of the doorposts, when a figure that is either God or the destroyer passes through, like the Hebrew text is a little, the Hebrew Bible is a little funny about who exactly is doing this damage. Does that section make you think of Exodus 12 also? Absolutely,
it does. Yeah. One of the things you were saying there that I think is so important is that like this, there's a discomfort with like God's role in protection and destroying, but it's so clearly there in that Exodus narrative.
Yes.
The text actually sometimes says it's God that's coming through.
Yes, that's right.
Sometimes it's the angel
goes
of
back
death.
And forth. Yeah.
But even if it's the angel of death, the angel is still sort of doing God's work. And so they're like, all the way back there in Exodus, we have this kind of tension in God. So I think that text, protection of the Israelites in Egypt through the blood of the lamb. Mm-hmm. Here also, I think we're evoking Ezekiel chapter 9. Mm-hmm. In Ezekiel, what's happening is this is right around the time of the exile, as you well know, and Ezekiel is writing from the exile, and he has this vision in which he's taken back to the temple, and he sees people desecrating the temple in Jerusalem, a lot like bad Israelites desecrating the temple, and an angel comes through with carrying a briefcase and like a marker, and goes through town and marks people on the forehead, and then the Babylonian army comes through and destroys Israel, but the ones who were marked on the forehead are not destroyed. And those are the second wave exiles for Ezekiel. And so that image, I think, that image draws on the one you're relating.
Yes.
About the Passover. So there's like a stream coming through from Exodus to Ezekiel to Revelation in which there is destruction coming, and the empire that is holding back the people of God is about to be destroyed. Hang on a second. We got to mark some folks. And so this is doing that. The people who receive the seal of God are being in some way protected from what is coming.
And it feels so, and it is, thank you for bringing up the Ezekiel text. I'd forgotten about that one. For some reason, it feels, I don't know, important that in the original story, you're marking like a household. And here we're marking individuals, like an individual body.
Yes.
And I don't know quite what else to say about that, but it feels like a different thing to me.
I think that's really important, Amy. And last week, when we were talking about the churches, we were talking about them as churches, as communities.
Yeah.
Here, people are being marked as individuals. We saw in one of those churches, I can't remember which one it was right now, that it was saying the church is not doing great, but there are some individuals who are doing fine.
Yes, that's right.
And so this seems to be reminding us that you're tied up with your community, but you are also an individual who's responsible for your own actions. I think elsewhere in Revelation, I'd have to check the reference, but the mark on the forehead is the name of God. And so you're being sealed with God's name as like, hey, this one belongs to me, so leave them alone. And it might also evoke for us, having read the book out of order in the way that we have, the mark of the beast that appears on the foreheads of those who succumb to the imperial economic strategies. Yeah. So you receive one of those marks or the other. Everybody's marked with some kind of mark.
Yeah.
And so you can't go markless. It's just a matter of which mark are you going to receive.
Yeah. And having the name of God on your forehead makes me think too of the priests that have like holy to Adonai on there from their like headpiece. Okay, I am picking up in verse 4. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000, sealed out of every tribe of the people of Israel. From the tribe of Judah, 12,000 sealed. From the tribe of Reuben, 12,000. From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. From the tribe of Asher, 12,000. From the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. From the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000. From the tribe of Simeon, 12,000. From the tribe of Levi, 12,000. From the tribe of Issachar, 12,000. From the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000. From the tribe of Joseph, 12,000. From the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000 sealed. Okay, I get it. 12 times 12 is 144. Did I get it?
You got it.
I got it. Okay, that's the key to the whole thing, right?
Yes.
No. There are a couple things that stand out to me here. So one of them is that, like, in the world of Hebrew Bible texts, as they sort of progress from the Torah through other parts of the Hebrew Bible, like once we've been through the Davidic kingdom and the destruction of the temple and coming back after the exile, there's not so much talking about the tribes anymore. Like we talk about the tribe of Judah and maybe the tribe of Levi, from which the folks from that tribe serve the temple, and the other tribes are sort of understood to be like either lost to the Assyrian Empire, like way back when, or maybe having assimilated into Judah. I wonder what you think of the fact that we're going back to talking about individual tribes.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of these calls back to an earlier time, not all the way back to creation, but back to the origin of the people of Israel.
Yes.
And it's going back there and sort of trying to reclaim that. And at the same time, I think, although it's a little bit in the background here, but 12 times 12 is probably thinking about the 12 tribes that are named here, and also the 12 apostles of Jesus, or the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And so we got two 12s. And so there's something here about the remembering the or maybe literally like remembering the tribes of Israel, the wholeness of Israel, completeness of Israel, and also the new sort of version of that in the apostolic vision. And so, those lost tribes, part of the message here, I think, is those tribes are no longer lost, right? They're being restored. The thing is the way it was originally created. But I think there's also a movement. It's not created sort of as it was, but in light of this new Christian thing. Does any of that ring true? Would you say that differently?
No, I think that's really helpful. And I think the last thing you said, that, we are going back to that time, but they're also being sort of newly imagined and newly created in some way. In the Jewish calendar right now, we're reading in the book of Numbers, where there's a lot of, sort of listing. The book starts with sort of a listing of tribes and numbers of people in each tribe. And so two things are striking to me from that. One of them is that all the tribes are equal here. They all have 12,000 sealed. And I don't think there's anywhere in the Hebrew Bible that they're imagined as of a similar size, a similar land holding, a similar amount of power, a similar, like the tribes are really held in some differential to each other. So to see them all listed here at 12,000 is quite different.
I really like that. So there's a sense of like egalitarianness or something, like distribution or like everybody's on equal footing or something like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
They're kind of in a strange order.
They are. Can you talk about that? I think you can talk about that in a way that I might not be able to.
I mean, I would have expected, they could have been in the order of birth, right? That is something the Hebrew Bible often likes to do. They could have been in the order of who their mother was. The tribes have 4 different mothers between them. They could have been in the order of like relative power or land holding or something like that. They're not in that order. There's one tribe here, Manasseh, that is not in the initial 12 tribes. That would have been Dan. Manasseh is a son of Joseph, who comes to represent sort of the northern world, but it's a little surprising to see Manasseh in here.
And usually when you see Manasseh and Ephraim.
That's right.
Ephraim's not here, right?
That's right. Yep. And usually when you see Manasseh and Ephraim, they're replacing Joseph.
Right.
But Joseph is still in here.
And Dan is missing. Is that what you're saying?
And Dan is missing. Dan has become Manasseh. It makes sense to me that Judah would be first.
Yes.
Because that is the Davidic lineage comes from Judah, and he is often maybe seen as the most important of the tribes. And then Reuben is the firstborn after that, but then it just gets a little strange. I don't know why they're in this order, other than that maybe it's precisely, maybe they didn't care about what the order of them was, or maybe it is precisely not in the order we would expect. Have you encountered anyone who's commented more on that?
In the commentaries I've been reading, everybody notices this, but I don't know that anybody has offered a particularly compelling explanation for it. One possibility is simply that John doesn't know his Hebrew Bible as well as you do. And so he's kind of done the best that he can do. Some people think that the leaving out of the tribe of Dan is because Dan comes to be associated with idolatry and other kinds of wayward activities across the Hebrew scripture and into Judaism of this period. And so maybe Dan has been left out intentionally. So I don't have anything great to do with it, other than to say it is an unusual remembering of the tribes.
Yeah, I think that's okay. It's just always so striking to me, and it's striking to me in the book of Numbers too, when all the tribes are going to be listed with the same thing, like in that they have different numbers of the tribes in the book of Numbers, like different how many people are in each tribe. But for example, they all bring exactly the same offering to the temple, and it's this like not the temple, the tabernacle, and it's this lengthy offering of what they bring, and the text goes out of its way to repeat. Every time this tribe brought that thing, and this tribe brought that thing, and readers now are like, my good gracious, why don't you just say they all brought the same thing? Like,
yeah, you could have said this like 12,000 from each tribe, and then just listed the tribes or something,
right? Yeah. And there's no logical reason that it has to list the 12,000 again and again for each one. But
what do you think? You wrote your dissertation was about. In some way about repetition and the value of a repetition. I mean, that your dissertation was a lot more interesting than that just made it sound.
No, not
But
really.
I'm curious. It was super interesting. But I'm curious what you think. Like, why the repetition, do you think?
I mean, what I was saying in my dissertation was a little bit different than here, but that when you encounter something that's repeated, if you can get yourself out of this sort of like part of your brain that just wants a summary, like a bullet point summary of everything, but to almost experience it more as poetry, as like there's an experience to this reading, and the text wants you to stay in this part longer, like your experience is longer here.
Yes.
And you come to anticipate the words that will follow, and that makes you feel really closely connected to the text as a reader, like that you trust the text because you feel a deeper connection to it. I know some people reading Numbers have emphasized that by listing all the tribes, there's each one matters for its own sake, and it's hard reading a summary of the whole thing, but we have to try to make ourselves remember that each individual, not even each individual tribe, but each individual person is worth a moment to think about.
Well, you were saying earlier, as you say that, I'm thinking about what you were saying earlier about people didn't really talk about the tribes. And I imagine that most people coming out of a Jewish tradition in the first century would have associated themselves with the tribe of Judah, right? And so there's nobody, we're addressing the churches in Asia Minor. I don't think there's anybody who's sitting around going, yeah, Naphtali. You know what I'm saying? Woohoo!
I love that guy.
In the Hebrew Bible, you might imagine that people are waiting to hear their family named in this way. And you're like, yeah. But in this text, it's like, no, there's nobody sitting around waiting for Asher to get announced.
Yeah.
And yet here we are. So there's a sense of the completeness, but it's not individualized, I don't think. How do you understand who these 144,000 are? Somehow they're Israel. Do you read them as Jews, Jewish Christians, like just Gentile Christians who are being reconfigured as Israel?
That's a great question.
Those are the sort of three possibilities that occur to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we'll go on to the next section in a moment, but I think because the next section seems to me to go on beyond the tribes, that is where I had imagined people who didn't have a connection to Israel in some way, Gentile communities I had imagined they would fall in that grouping.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess given where this book is, it must be that these are Jewish Christians. I mean, they can't just be Jews, right? I don't imagine John would like that.
I don't think so. In my heart of hearts, I want them to be.
Nice
I want this to be a
possibility,
recognition.
but realistically,
yeah. The 144,000 are mentioned again in Revelation 14, and there they are explicitly said to be followers of the Lamb. They are also virgin men, which brings a whole different. There's a lot going on there.
But there's only 12,000.
So we can leave that part aside. So I think that for me, the cleanest reading is, I think, where you're also headed, which is these are ethnic Jews who are religiously followers of Jesus. So they're people like Paul, who came out of a Jewish tradition and have come to see Jesus as the Messiah. I can also see a case that what we're doing here is just displacing Israel with Christians and saying we're going to think about Christians, whatever their origin is, Jew or Gentile, as being part of this 144,000. But it does raise the question of like what's happening in the next section.
Right.
So I think the cleanest way of thinking about it is that these are Jewish followers of Jesus.
Yeah. Let's see if when we read the next section that informs us in any particular way about that.
That sounds good.
Hi, I'm Julie Holm. I'm the pastor of a small rural community in the UCC and the ELCA, the Brush Valley Fusion of Faith. I was an early Patreon supporter because I loved the podcasts on the Narrative Lectionary, but this year I became a Bible study and liturgy supporter. I'm part-time, and I love that I don't have to spend hours preparing for our Bible study every week. Plus, my group just loves Bobby's Bible studies. The liturgy also gives me a real heads up on putting a worship service together, which I appreciate as a part-time pastor. Amy's responses, both as a deep Bible scholar of her scriptures and as a novice to the Christian scriptures, deeply inform new ways of looking at scripture, and I really appreciate that. I love Bible Worm, and I'm so glad to support it.
Okay, I'm picking up in verse 9. After this I looked, and there was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, robed in white with palm branches in their hands. They cried out in a loud voice, saying, "Salvation belongs to our God who is seated on the throne and to the Lamb." And all the angels stood around the throne and around the elders and the 4 living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worshipped God, singing, "Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen." Okay, so now there are people from every nation and tribe and language standing before the throne and the Lamb. What are you sort of picturing? Are the other people who have been marked, those 12,000 from every tribe, also like standing before the throne, and now it's sort of like a bigger multitude?
Is that how you see it in your mind's eye?
I don't actually know.
Yeah. I think it's not clear, Amy, and this is one of the questions that sort of drives this text a little bit, or at least interpretation of this text. One way of seeing it is that. So there's been this group of there's a small group of sealed Israel, whoever that is. Mm-hmm. And then there's this larger group that's so big, you can't really count it. So you've got sort of 2 concentric circles around the throne, the sealed ones inside or wherever. Maybe they're mixed up together. And then this like multitude from the nations. I think that's one way to see it. N.T. Wright sees it as, and I think this is not just him, but a fairly common interpretation, is that this is another version. Remember when we were reading chapter 5 and the angel said, "See the Lion of Judah, the Root of David, he can conquer." Mm-hmm. And then you hear that, and then when you turn, you look, you see the slaughtered lamb. And so what you hear and what you see are totally different things. N.T. Wright reads this that way, to say you hear 144,000, but when you turn around, it's an uncountable multitude. And so it's not just 144,000, it is, and it's not just people from Israel, it's everybody, and there's millions of them. And so he reads this as a disconnect that way. Brian Blunt reads this as a whole different time and place. So he thinks the first part of this chapter is talking about what's happening between seal 6 and 7. And the second part of this chapter is anticipating the fulfillment of time after Rome has been destroyed, and now who's there. And so he sees the 144,000 as having been protected in the destruction of Rome and not having been killed, and then the multitude as being those who weren't sealed, but yet still remained faithful, but they paid the price. And so in this, he sees it as a future throne room in which the sealed and the unsealed are all gathered together.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of different ways of reading it, and they end you up in kind of different places.
Really different places.
Did one of those resonate with you in a particular way?
I did. I mean, I don't know that it is that I think it's the best of the readings, but I did. It felt like I felt some kind of like break between the description of all the tribes that were sealed and then this scene. And I sort of wrote in there, like, where are we? Like now there's a throne and the Lamb. Like, are we in a heavenly vision? Like what's happening? Yeah. Because those things weren't immediately present in the first part of the chapter. The disjunct, the sort of the idea that you hear that all these members of the tribes have been sealed, but then when you look around, you see all these people from the nations. That is very, I like that it's so surprising to me. Like I think it's a really interesting idea. I think it's like, it feels very like really supersessionist. Wow. But really interesting, like given that we are that is the world that we're in. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I like the unexpectedness of it.
Yeah. To me, though, I really like that way of reading it, which is to say, what is said is that there is sort of a limited set of people, but it turns out that the number is ginormous. And this is one of the things that I like to say about God, just in general, is that God is always more merciful than you think God is going to be. God's community is always embracing beyond what you think it's going to embrace. And so I like that image of like very specific, 144,000. Oh no, just kidding. It's millions upon millions, more than you can count. And like, that's how big God's claim on people is. I really like that a lot theologically. Brian Blunt's way of reading it is to say something like, hey, y'all, we're about to go through some stuff. Some of y'all are going to be protected, and some of you aren't. But it's a little different than Ezekiel. In Ezekiel, it's some of y'all are going to be protected, and the rest of y'all are idolaters who are going to die.
That's exactly right.
Here, it's some of y'all are going to be protected, and you're going to be my witnesses, and you're going to make it through. And some of y'all are not going to be protected, and you're going to be my witnesses, and you're not going to make it through. But there's going to be a time when we're all gathered together again around the throne. So whether you make it through or whether you don't, nonetheless, you're going to be resurrected to new life. And so this is, in some ways a comfort, but also in some ways, like, that's kind of a little scary because you don't know whether you're the sealed one or not a sealed one. And so you just got to go into the witnessing thinking like, maybe I'm going to die, maybe I'm not. Right. But on the other side, there is life at the throne.
Yeah.
That one feels like it has more energy to me in terms of, if we're thinking revelation and resistance, that feels like maybe it has a little more energy about resistance. Like you just got to do it. Whether you are protected or not, you can't know.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Bobby, I wonder, this thing that they cry out in verse 10, salvation belongs to our God who is seated on the throne and to the Lamb.
Yeah.
There is something about the sort of phrasing in that just seems a little, it seems a little strange to me that they give you sort of more information about God. They say God who is seated on the throne. They don't tell you anything about the relationship between God and the Lamb. Like the Lamb just seems kind of like appended on the end of that. I know we've been talking a lot about the Lamb. It's not just that, there's some Lamb there next to the throne. We'll just include him. I don't know. Does it seem strange to you?
I mean, this text and other Christian texts, early Christian texts, are wrestling with how do we talk about Jesus as sort of uniquely carrying the power of God and yet not displacing God from the Hebrew scripture. And it's not an easy thing to do. in my mind, that image that we've talked about from the book of Daniel, where in chapter 7, where the Ancient One of Days is seated on the throne, and the one like a son of man comes on the cloud, like that's the image that's in my head. Like they are clearly related to one another, but there is yet still a difference between the two. I think of this kind of the same way. Like God is God. God is in charge. The Lamb is carrying out, participating in, being part of that reign. We haven't quite gotten our way to a Trinitarian theology yet.
Right.
And so we don't know
Yeah.
how to say that differently. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah. No, I think it makes sense that the lamb is there. The lamb is always there.
Amy, the other thing that's going on here in this text is that word salvation, in Greek, soteria. To my ear, that's a religious term, salvation. And in Christian context, it conveys certain kinds of things about like, where is your eternal soul going?
Yeah.
In the context of the Roman Empire, that was a word that the empire used for about itself. That was a word that Caesar would have used. I have saved you from chaos, right? I have saved you from a life of violence and uncertainty, and I've created a Pax Romana, and I am the savior of the world. And so one can read that not simply as a religious affirmation about who God is, but also as a political counter-affirmation about who Caesar is not. And so when you say God is on the throne, God offers salvation, you are saying something religious, but you are also saying something important about who you do not put your trust in and who is not the source of your life and your well-being.
That's really important and really helpful. And it seems so, I mean, I guess I've just been steeped in the world of Bible and New Testament lately, but it seems so incredibly chutzpahdik that the empire would say that they have saved you from chaos. It just seems very like, wow, have you? Okay.
But I mean, we hear that today where our president says, I am the only one who can save us from this, right? And so like, this is a thing that rulers say.
This is a thing that leaders say.
And it is chutzpahdik.
It is chutzpahdik, yeah, okay. Bobby, this last scene in verses 11 and 12 it's just so over the top. Like there's already multitudes and now there's angels and they stood around the elders and the 4 living creatures. And then I just keep thinking of the living creatures and the lamb. Like it's just this whole like scene and then they fall on their faces. Yeah. And this prayer that they give is so blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might. Like they're just saying all the words, all the things you can think of to say. And it reminds me of the prayer that we say all the time within a Jewish service, the Kaddish. It's in Aramaic and it's just it's very similar in that way. It's like you praise God in every way that you can think of. And it almost after a certain point, I feel like my mind kind of starts like glazing over. Like there are just so many sort of vague praise words that it's hard for a human mind to hold all of it. But in that prayer, there's this line that says, "La'ela mikol birchata v'shirata," like beyond all song and blessing. Like you are beyond. We're going to say every word we know how to say, and also recognize that we didn't get it. We didn't. Yeah. There's no way to say what it is we believe you are, and that's the sense that I get of this. Like they're saying everything they know how to say. They have fallen prostrate on the ground. Like There are not words. Yes. There are not words for this.
I love that, Amy. So they've used every word they've got, and they keep using the next word because the word they used before didn't go far enough.
It didn't go far enough.
And they get to the end of the words, and there's still not words to express. No matter how much you say, you can never say it.
Yeah.
I love that. There is, of course, also a importance of attributing all those things to God. I'm playing a certain kind of fiddle today,
do it.
Because there are others who would like for those attributes to be claimed by them as the way, the wise one, the honorable one, the powerful one, the mighty one. And by saying all of that, all of it belongs to God, you are also relativizing the wisdom and honor and power and might of Caesar and others who might claim those things.
Yeah. In a way that I imagine was quite risky and not what the dominant culture wanted you to be doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Bobby, I'm glad you keep reminding us of that. And that is making me see that just earlier in this passage, these people, these nations robed in white, have palm branches in their hands, which I know you have talked about in the context of the Gospels when they've come up as representing something related to the empire or the king. Is that right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Palm Sunday is when we talk about palms, and only John actually has them holding palms, which is a whole other thing. But yes, so what I have said then, and I think it's relevant here, is that palms were used by the Jews in the period of the Maccabees. In 1 and 2 Maccabees, it talks about people waving palms to celebrate the Maccabean victory over Greece and the restoration of the temple after it had been desecrated by Antiochus Epiphanes. It's a symbol of the victory of God, or the victory of God's people over the empire. It's a symbol of the rededication, the taking what was desecrated and making it holy once again. And so I think that waving of the palms here, you might go back there. You might also go to Palm Sunday, as you were suggesting, where the arrival of Jesus is celebrating some of those same things, the overthrow of the empire. And here it's like in the ultimate sense, right? We are in the middle of, in some way, the actual unraveling of the empire in an eschatological sense and the celebration of God's ultimate victory. And so the palms are appropriate in that way. It's also interesting, the word for palm is phoenikes, the plural. And when you hear that phoenikes, you hear the word Nike at the end, which is not, it's not related technically to the word Nike, which is victory, Nike, but you hear it anyway. You know what I mean? Like it's part of the word. And so the waving of the palms and saying palms, you hear that word victory, which is Rome's word for itself. And here you have the people of God demonstrating with the phoenikes that in fact God's victory is the ultimate victory.
I love that. Okay, I'm picking up in verse 13. Then one of the elders addressed me, saying, "Who are these robed in white, and where have they come from?" I said to him, "Sir, you are the one that knows." Then he said to me, "These are they who have come out of the great ordeal. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. For this reason they are before the throne of God and worship him day and night within his temple, and the one who is seated on the throne will shelter them. They will hunger no more and thirst no more. The sun will not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd, and he will guide them to springs of the water of life, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes." Bobby, this reference to the great ordeal is making me think back to that theory one of the theories you mentioned, that there is a group of people who are faithful and do come to the throne and were not protected from the difficulties, to put it mildly, of the time. Is that how that resonates for you?
There is certainly a reading in which these group, like the washed in the blood of the Lamb, is a reference to people who are martyred in the struggle between God and Rome. They get caught in the crossfire, I think is Brian Blunt's word. So they come through that ordeal clothed in white, which is, the sign that you have not succumbed to the seduction of the empire. Basically, you've remained faithful. So I think it's certainly possible to read it that way. I think it is also possible to read it as not only about martyrdom, but also about other sort of forms of costliness that are not giving your physical life, but are nonetheless costly. And so people who have, they could have had an easier life if they just got the mark of the beast and participated in the Roman economy and did all the things, declared Caesar as Lord. And they didn't do that. And maybe they didn't get killed for it, but they certainly paid a price for it. So I think you can read this, in either one of those ways.
When I first encountered these lovely words, they will hunger no more and thirst no more. The sun will not strike them, nor any scorching heat. The first thing I wrote in the margin of my text was like, do they have bodies still? Like, are they alive in bodies in the way that I am alive in a body? Or is it that, or are they not? You know, like, do they endure any human suffering, bodily embodied suffering or not? But then I realized, well, I didn't realize, my footnote in my study Bible realized for me that this is really hearkening back to Isaiah chapter 49, where people are returning from the exile, where it's sort of this call to come back from the exile and like a promise of ease for people as they are making that trip. And that's that had me thinking about exile more broadly in this sort of, figurative exile of a sense of being far away from God and being invited to come back to be closer to God. And I don't know, does that sort of putting us in the mindset of returning from the exile make you think that way?
I love that, Amy. I had not put that together that way for myself, but I love that connection. And so this is pointing back in that sense to return from exile. It is also anticipating what we're going to read next week, which is the arrival of New Jerusalem on the earth. God comes to dwell on the earth in New Jerusalem. And so it's pointing back and it's pointing forward in that way we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about that way of thinking about it, and I appreciate so much the word exile, is it's the sense that we are now living in the exile. Yes. And it is exile from what was in the past, and it is yet exile from what is going to be fulfilled in the future. There's a book that I really love related to Revelation. I mean, it's a quirky little book. It's William Stringfellow writing in the context of Vietnam about, the relevance of Revelation for American Christians in the Vietnam era. It's worth a read, but the title of his book is An Ethic for Christians and Other Aliens Living in a Strange Land. And it's trying to capture that idea that, where we live here and now is the exile, even though we have come to feel it as home, many of us, but we're living in exile. And I appreciate your putting that on the table that way.
Yeah, that's a very evocative thought for me, that what feels like home is actually exile.
The other image that's here that struck me is that God will shelter them is really something like God will build a tent over them or something like that, which put me not in Isaiah, but in like Numbers, where the tent is the tabernacle. And I don't know, there's probably a lot of problems with that image, but I'm curious, like, does thinking about not the exile, that wandering, but the wandering from Egypt to the promised land, does thinking about that tent go anywhere for you?
Certainly that time period goes somewhere for me. I don't know if I would have named like the tabernacle in particular, but God's tabernacle at that time was like the one big one, and then everyone had their small ones sort of encamped around the tabernacle. And so that idea also of sort of being in the wilderness where, it was pretty brutal physically to be wandering in the wilderness, in the desert, and to have a God who will shelter you is needed for the sake of your life, for the sake of your ability to endure.
Yeah.
Is there something in particular you want to draw out related to the tabernacle? I don't want to I'm happy to follow your thinking down that way.
No, I appreciate because, you added a lot to my thinking just there. Because, you would not have, the whole people of Israel would not have piled into the tabernacle to, take a nap in the middle of the afternoon, right? That was holy space, and it was God's space. And I like that idea of, but we have our own little tabernacles that are like extensions of that main tabernacle.
Right, all sort of set up around.
And that's making me think a little bit about, our faith communities, our local faith communities are some version of that, where God is sheltering us in our place for now.
Yeah.
As we'll see next week in New Jerusalem, there is no temple because God lives in the middle of the city. And so there really is a sense in which in that culminating eschatological vision, everybody's gathered in God's tent.
Yeah.
And
right.
so I like that there is a future time coming where God is literally tenting with people.
Right.
And in the meantime, while we're in the wilderness, while we're in exile, we have our little tabernacles that are not the tabernacle.
Right. It's still God at the center,
right.
but there is some, even like a temporary or soft division between what is God's space and what is your, napping room.
Yeah.
Yeah. En route to this other vision of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Bobby, I don't want to perseverate on this question, but I just want to note for the sort of sake of evolving language on this subject that in verse 17, now the Lamb is at the center of the throne. Mm-hmm. So it's again just sort of looking at the different ideas and language and images that come up at this time that they're grappling with what is the relationship between and within.
It's also so interesting right there that so the Lamb will shepherd them. That is an interesting flip of language.
It's a slaughtered lamb, no less.
Yeah. And he will lead them by the springs of life-giving water, which echoes Psalm 23.
Sure does.
And so now you've got, so the Lamb is the shepherd who's leading the people to the stream. There's just, all the imagery is getting jumbled up, but in a really profound kind of way.
Yes. No, I think that's exactly right, in a really profound way. And the things that had sort of, the relative power structures, even between who can be a shepherd and who's going to be the flock, has now been shifted that a lamb is going to be the shepherd of the humans. And it's another way to sort of reshuffle the deck and say that ideas are going to be held in different relationship to each other and in this world we're coming into.
Absolutely.
Bobby, is there anything else you want to raise from this section in particular?
I think we have covered it pretty well.
Well, then, what is rising up for you today?
I think this text is so profound because it is set in the middle of the tribulation. Mm. So we've just had the 6 seals. Rome is coming undone. Some really scary stuff is happening in the world. Life is threatening. And so it is a vision that is given just there between seal 6 and 7. And the people are in the middle of some stuff. It is acknowledging that they're in the middle of some stuff. It is not telling them that they don't have to go through some stuff. Mm-hmm. It is anticipating New Jerusalem in Revelation 21, which we'll talk about next week. But we've got a long way to go before we get there. So it's giving them a little foretaste of here's where we're going to end up, but we're not ready to dwell there yet. We've got to do this right now. And so when we're thinking about revelation and resistance, I think this is such an important moment in this text to say the world is coming undone and God is claiming once again to be the legitimate ruler of the earth and the one who is deserving of wisdom and honor and glory and power and might, and the one who is capable of saving people from chaos and destruction. There are emperors, there are other rulers who claim that they are able to do those things, that they are worthy of those things, but they're not. And so this is a call to the Christians in John's time and people of faith today to recognize where true salvation is and where true peace comes from and where power and might rightly resides, and to be committed to that. And it's gonna be ugly. I mean, there's gonna be some things, and people are gonna be marked for survival, and some people are not gonna make it through. But all of those people are gonna end up around the throne of the Lamb in New Jerusalem. And so you just gotta go out there and give the testimony and be true to what you believe. And it might not look like it's working out, but we have this foretaste. Mm-hmm. And in the end of the day, when you look around, there are so many more people around the throne than you ever thought were going to be there. I don't know exactly what that's trying to capture, but they are countless. And so the scope of God's salvation is enormous and more than we can probably think about, more than we can imagine. And so like we shouldn't be trying to count it out, right? We shouldn't be trying to make a list because that list is too big. So remain faithful and give the testimony, and God will sort it all out and give us a shelter in the end. And you don't have to worry about it because God's enormously merciful. But right now we just got to do some things. So I feel like that's what this text is doing in Revelation. And I feel like that is a message for us in our moment in time today.
Oh, I love that, Bobby. And I especially love that you just drew out how many people, when you look around, like there are a lot of people around the throne. And the way that sort of hit for me right now at this moment in history is like the work can feel really lonely and incredibly vulnerable. And, you know, I know there's been a lot of conversation just in my circles of sort of like, what is the role of protest? What does protest really help? What does it not help? What is it, you know, like all those questions. And one thing that it does seem to help is this sense that people come to realize like, oh, I'm not the only one who is trying to resist this. Because if you feel you're the only one resisting it, it does start to feel futile, you know, and you could have a much more comfortable life in your body if you just don't resist it.
Yeah.
And you really are strengthened by numbers. So having a vision at this point in the story of all the people who will be there, I think is really quite a shot in the arm.
Yeah, I love that. What about you, Amy? What do you see when you look at this text?
I mean, I think the only other thing I would want to add is that, you know, in the wake of Walter Brueggemann's passing, a lot of tributes to him have come out in, you know, various podcasts and other kinds of things that I listen to. And so the other day I happened to be listening to a lecture that he had given, I don't know, quite a while ago about totalism was how he talked about it. It was so lovely because I feel like I've been learning him through you all these years and sort of didn't realize that's what was happening. But totalism, the idea being that there is some kind of system that you can't even imagine anything happening outside that system anymore. Like everything, like if we take, for example, like the capitalist marketplace, like it's so hard to imagine something that is not fitting into that system somehow.
Yes.
When I read this description of all of these humans and other creatures like falling on their faces and saying this totally over the top blessing and prayer towards God, it's so over the top. Like I have to admit, I like sort of like chuckled a little bit because I was like, this is really like, y'all are not kidding. And it is like a mirror to me in holding up the ways in which we do that for the systems in our world of our empire at this time, that like we just can't even see the ways that every creature is becoming oriented toward some human creation, some kind of entity we have made, some kind of political system, and we can't see it because we're inside of it.
Yeah.
And so seeing it here and realizing sort of in conversation with that lecture that your teacher offered, I don't know, is really, it makes me question a lot, sort of like what are all the ways in any given day in my life that I can see all the creatures sort of aligning and praising some kind of human, like political or economic system as though there's nothing else. And wouldn't it be so much better if we could orient this way?
That's beautiful, Amy. And the other thing that's there is, even if what you're doing is resisting the totality, you're nonetheless in danger of yet still thinking that the totality is the only thing that there is, right? So like your options are either to support the totality or to oppose the totality, but it is nonetheless a totality. When Brueggemann is talking about that, he's referring to the French theorist Emmanuel Levinas, who wrote a book called Totality and Infinity. And the basic point of which is the way to undermine the totality is to keep pointing to the infinity. there is always something beyond the total. And, in Brueggemann's understanding, the biblical understanding, that is God. And so one of the reasons you keep talking about the infinite, one of the reasons you keep piling adjectives on top of adjectives on top of adjectives, and you never still get there, is to say there is something beyond the totality. So it's not just resistance within the totality, but it's the acknowledgement of something else beyond and above and all the things than the total.
Wow. That's powerful stuff, Bobby. We have only one more week in our summer series on Revelation and Resistance.
We do.
We'll be answering all the questions and tying it up in a really lovely bow. We're reading from chapter 21, verses 1 to 7, and 22 to 27, and then chapter 22, verses 1 through 5.
It's a really beautiful text about life in the New Jerusalem. It kind of does wrap it up in a little bow.
How lovely. I look forward to that.
Me too, Amy. Thanks for this conversation.
Thanks, Bobby. This was great. I'll see you next time.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping make this podcast possible.
Join us again next time for the last episode of this summer season, when we'll read Revelation chapter 21, verses 1 through 7, and 22 through 27, and chapter 22, verses 1 through 5. Until then, keep on digging.